All right. Colin, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Here we are. Is this your first TechCrunch Disrupt?
Great stuff.
This is.
All right.
This is.
All right. So, where do we start?
It's on. It's on live.
You first got drafted by the 49ers over a decade ago, so you are familiar with the Bay Area. But you're now just diving headfirst into Silicon Valley for the first time. What was your first impression of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, first impression of Silicon Valley was I got some exposure while I was playing. I was like, all right, saw the tech people, they're working on things. I spent most of my time on business and football, so didn't have a lot of background experience, but I got that early exposure. And then around 2016, 2017, started diving deeper into Silicon Valley and investing, started angel investing at that point, and just grew and grew from there. And that led to sitting on the board of Medium. I got to learn from incredible people like Ev Williams, Biz Stone, Ben Horowitz, and some others that just incredible leaders in the space that really helped shape my thinking, helped shape my understanding, and ultimately led me to where I'm at today.
How do you think Silicon Valley has changed since you first stepped onto the scene in 2017?
That's a great question. I think what we're seeing now, well, obviously we have a whole new world with AI, and part of what I'm building, but I think the biggest thing I've seen is there's a whole new wave of founders, of investors, of LPs that are entering the space and looking for ways to create access and opportunity. And I've seen that be a major shift. Still a long way to go there, and a lot of work to be done. But within my own network, I've seen more and more people talking about it and exploring it and trying to figure out how they have their footprint within the space.
Sure. So you are starting a media startup. You started to talk about it, and but I want to kind of go back to kind of the height of your career when you were wrapped in a media storm. I mean, it was one of the biggest stories of my lifetime, and I just wanted to ask, what was that like?
It's always interesting when you try to do something that is right. And you try to do something that is going to benefit people and create a better future, a better society. And you do it because we all see what's happening. We all see people getting killed in the streets. We all see the inequities that exist and show up within society, within our day-to-day lives, and the impact on the people that we have around us, within our communities, within our families. And when you do that and you see such a strong response to it, it really gives you perspective and insight. We have such a long way to go. But the other part that I learned during that time period, there are also a lot of people that want to go that long way with you. And I think that has been the beautiful part coming out of that is while there has been resistance to it, there's also been a lot of organizing, a lot of momentum, and a lot of push to create a better and more equitable future.
Yeah, so I mean, we're here with the Disrupt in huge letters behind us, and I would say that you are one of the true disruptors of, this generation. Perhaps not in the same way that, maybe not in the same way that some of the tech founders that we've been talking about have been yet, but I mean, just you grabbed the nation's attention and really had a great change on the world. So what advice do you have to the founders in the audience tonight who also would like to affect some sort of change in the world, whether it's in tech or elsewhere?
I think the best advice I would have there is, one, do your homework and know why you're doing what you're doing. And then two, once you know that, go after it passionately and go after it with everything that you have and bring people with you. I would not be sitting here today, and none of you would know me at all if there weren't a whole lot of people that helped me along the way. And that's everyone from my wife to family and friends, to teammates, to coaches, to some of the investors and advisors that I've had along the way. So have those people with you, because that makes you sustainable for the long run. One of the biggest challenges that you will likely face when you try to disrupt something, or you try to do something you're passionate about and it ends up disrupting something in that process, is you will face a lot of resistance. There will be difficult times, and during those times, you want to have those people that you can lean on, the people that can support you, and that's really what gives you that endurance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you've mentioned now your support system, and some people who are mentors and advisors to you. I want to talk a little bit about your fellow Medium board members. You've told me in the past that a lot of those people have been very influential in kind of shaping your business sense. One of those people that you mentioned is Ben Horowitz. That's a storied investor that everyone in the audience likely knows and cares about, and you know what he thinks at least. And so how did you meet, and what's your relationship to him?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the first time I met Ben, actually. I had met Ben years ago, and then got to spend more time with him on the Medium board. And from there was able to build a really good relationship with him. And the thing I appreciate about Ben is he's always been very direct with me. Whether he really likes what I'm doing or whether it's like, yeah, you should think about that differently. So I've always appreciated that, and he's always pushed forward in a very positive direction, which I have also appreciated. And I think the influence that I've seen in our relationship is even as I was starting Lumi, he was one of the first people I called. I was like, hey, I have this idea for a company. I think this makes a lot of sense based upon my past experiences and where I see the opportunity. What do you think? And just a great sounding board before I even got off the ground with Lumi. And then from there, he was actually the person who introduced me to their head of talent, their head of startups, who ultimately introduced me to our now head of engineering. So has been a phenomenal person, phenomenal mentor along this journey.
Did he invest?
He did not invest. So we also have that opportunity. But to be fair, one of the conversations we had when we pitched him, he was like, it's early for us on any company within this space. We want to see how that's going to play out and target Series A. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you are close. And Ben Horowitz surprised a lot of people this summer. He endorsed Donald Trump. He has since endorsed Kamala Harris. But when that official announcement came, a lot of people were surprised. And were you surprised?
Yeah, I think like everybody was surprised just based upon his track record and based upon my interaction with him. From my understanding, that backing came from the firm, and then he since personally backed Kamala. So I haven't dove into that with him and discussed it with him, but I know he has since backed Kamala, so I was happy to see that.
Sure. But you didn't give him a call or anything about that?
No, I let Ben go about his business.
I guess you have to with him. So I ask because you juggle so many roles. Like, you are a very multi-dimensional person who you are a quarterback who has played in the Super Bowl. You are a civil rights activist, and now you are a startup founder. So I think that you wear a lot of hats, and I'm curious what you want your legacy to be.
That's a great question. I honestly don't think about legacy too much. I think the biggest thing that I think about is, can I have a positive impact in what I'm doing? And That's whether I'm playing football, that's whether I'm fighting for people in the community, or whether it's building a company that I hope helps millions of people tell their stories and bring their stories to life that haven't been able to. I think with everything I do, I try to take that approach of how can I help people with what I'm doing, and how can this help advance them?
And how much of the kind of media storm that happened to you around your 2016 protest, how much did that play a role in you starting Lumi with ownership as a core part of the platform?
Yeah, there are a few things that really influence that. I mean, one, I obviously saw how important narrative is, and being able to control the narrative and the story that you want to tell, and making sure that that comes through true and authentic. The other part that really became a major influence is the media and publishing company I built before Lumi. And I had seen that most creators don't own the work that they create. I'd seen that most of them are living paycheck to paycheck and project to project, trying to figure out where their next income is going to be coming from. And the other part that I saw was very long production times and very high production expenses. And as we were trying to solve those problems and looking at how we can benefit creators in that process, that ultimately led to the founding of Lumi.
And just, Lumi hasn't launched the product yet, is that right?
We have our beta testers on the platform right now.
Okay, so for everyone in the audience, when Lumi does come out, what can they expect? As a viewer or a reader, what can you use Lumi for?
Yeah, so Lumi will help you take an idea or a concept into a finished story product. So everything from character development to ideation to script writing, image generation, and then putting that all together. And where we start and where our focus is initially is comics, graphic novels, and manga. And the final piece that we actually fold in there is publishing and merchandising. It's one of the major barriers that we've seen creators face. One, getting publishing deals and retaining ownership. But two, the business model actually isn't effective. So we do on-demand publishing, so we make sure that the first book sold, the creator is profitable. Same thing with merchandising. You have all of these creators who are creating stories, selling their stories, and they have consumers coming that want to back and support them. Most of them don't have merchandising with their stories because it's inaccessible to them. They don't want to be the business owner and handle the logistics. So we've integrated all of that into the platform.
And I mean, do you see this as just a place where creators come, or do you see this as kind of a destination where people will come to watch their favorite content, find new stuff? I mean, what's the full vision here?
Yeah, the full vision is, I think stories become very fluid. So we'll have creators on the platform, we'll have readers and viewers on the platform, and we want Lumi to be that destination where people come to for stories. But when we think about stories right now, because of the production barriers, you have to choose one particular medium for your story, tell it, and then go try to get it done somewhere else. And what we think AI is actually going to enable is for creators to move very fluidly and very quickly between a comic and graphic novel, to a children's story, to an animation, to a TV series, to a film. And that's what we're looking at long term.
And why are you starting with manga?
So manga is a great place for us to start because very passionate fan base and user base. Also, with where the technology is today, this is something that we can deliver on right now and drive value for creators. Video models are coming very quickly and progressing very well. But when we look at full animation or full TV series or films, we still have a ways to go there. So we're laying that foundation with comics, graphic novels, manga today.
So there was just a report the other day about Medium. It was about the % of AI-generated content on the platform. And the CEO spoke about it, and he didn't seem to be, too concerned about the problem. But I mean, the platform that you're creating is for generating, AI generated stories, really. I'm curious of how you think that works in the same world as Medium, and if those visions are aligned.
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the Medium side, very focused on human-created content and really driving that, coming from expertise, from experience, and from the users on the platform. When we look at storytelling on Lumi, where we're focused is how do we enable stories? And that may come from AI assistants. It may come directly from users creating their stories. So I think that's one important distinction when we come on to Lumi as a platform is you can use AI as much or as little as you want on the platform. So if you have a full manuscript, you can upload that, and we can take that and help you create your story, publish it, merchandise it, and you can be off and running. If you need help creating your story because you may not have gone through character development, it may be your first time writing a script, but you have this phenomenal idea, we can help you through that process. So we try to create that opportunity where AI is there to help you where you need it and how you need it, but isn't forced on a user.
Right. And will readers and viewers know that they're looking at kind of AI-generated content when it is, or will that be concealed and you won't be able to tell what's human-generated, what's AI-generated? How does that work?
Yeah, we don't have anything right now that distinguishes AI-generated content from human-made content. I think that's something that becomes an interesting question because if you use AI in ideation, should that be counted as AI-generated content as it goes into your script? If you use it in a character development, does that become AI-generated content within it? So I think we have a spectrum of how much AI shows up, how it shows up in that process, and I think that's something that's still going to be figured out as we move forward and what that looks like. But as it stands today, I don't think most people are looking at, hey, how much of this is AI, how much of it isn't. I think people are looking for where are the phenomenal stories going to be told.
And I mean, I would push back just a little bit on that, just because I think that some people are, like, especially creators, like graphic designers, are a little bit worried about AI tools. I mean, you know, when we've seen these AI, you know, image generators come out, you know, I get people all the time telling me how they're upset, you know, that, you know, this is replacing me. This is doing something that I got paid to do. So I'm just curious what you say to those people who might not be ready to embrace this stuff.
Yeah, we have talked with a lot of those people. And I think the primary piece that we've been able to pull out as far as that concern is large companies using it to replace them and take their jobs, and them being out of work. Now, what we look at as the future is there's actually going to be a very drastic shift that we think a lot of those creators are actually going to be the ones that are independently creating their own stories and now have assistants where a lot of those graphic designers, a lot of those illustrators, when we've talked to them, they have backlogs of stories that they want to tell, but they aren't writers. So they have this great idea, but they either have to go fundraise to be able to hire a writer. If they're lucky enough, they have a friend who's a writer that's willing to jump on board and take a risk with them. But there's a significant barrier for them to be able to tell the stories they want. So they spend most of their time illustrating and designing other people's stories. So I think AI actually will be a huge assistance to them that will actually help them create independence. So I think that's a little bit of the irony that we think is going to show up, is the thing that some creators are fearing right now, I think will actually be the thing that drives their independence and freedom to tell the stories they want.
Yeah, so you're clearly very savvy in the media space and in the tech space. You said you've been, you know, angel investing since 2017. I think you previously told me that you have about 50 investments. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I'm curious kind of what kind of startups you like to invest in and who introduced you to that?
So interesting enough, Chameleonaire was actually the first person who introduced me. And he took me to Upfront Summit in LA, and that was the first investor event that I went to. Met with Mark Suster there, got some great insight, but that really kicked the ball off for me going down this investor path. And when I think about companies that I'm going to invest in, I really think about, is this solving a problem that I see? And do I think this is going to be valuable to people? I think those are the two primary questions, because most of my investments are very early stage companies. So looking at those two things, and that third thing I would throw in there is, do I believe in this founder? And I think that's probably the biggest bet you're making in the early stage is a great idea might only be a great idea if the right person isn't executing it.
Yeah, and have any of the startups that you've invested in been winners?
We have a couple that have been winners.
All right. Any you're willing to name?
Not right now, but we'll have a few of those at some point.
All right, worth asking. We were just talking backstage for a little bit about kind of identity, and I was telling you a story. I mean, my brother was a college football player. He had to stop due to a medical injury, and his identity was very affected because he played football like you since he was a little kid, and that's all he ever kind of wanted to be, and I think the same is true for you. So, you know, you're in your mid-20s, and you're told that you have to stop playing football. You didn't know then that you were going to be a tech entrepreneur. I mean, talk to me about what that was like when you realized that your identity had to change on a dime.
Well, I think the interesting piece there, thinking about the identity part, is I never thought of myself as a football player. I thought of myself as someone who played football. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because to that identity piece, it was part of what I did, but it wasn't who I was. But at that point, 2016, I had been playing football for 20 years of my life, in organized football. So when you think about doing something for 20 years and then overnight having that taken away, and you no longer can do the thing that you love, well, what is next for you? Now, I was fortunate enough to have my business degree, have opportunities off of the field that I was able to build upon. But you very quickly find yourself in a situation where you are looking for, what is it that I'm going to do in the long term? And where can I drive the most value and impact? And what does that look like? And where are the areas that I'm passionate about that I can do that? So I think it's an interesting challenge, but I would say coming out the other side of that, it's an incredible challenge to have gone through, because now it puts me in a position where I am not concerned about what happens tomorrow, because I know I've gone through enough things that I've gotten through them, and I've been able to be successful through them. So whatever that next challenge is, whatever that next obstacle is, you face it head on and you keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, what is it about you that you feel like has, you know, allowed you to succeed in multiple different avenues?
I would say resilience more than anything. My wife may say stubborn, but I'll go with resilience. For me, I think about it as, regardless of what it is, do you have the ability to keep moving forward? Because in any given moment, things may not look great. But if you keep moving forward, and I think this applies directly to startups as well, if you keep moving forward, eventually you will find your areas for success. And I have found that to be true in football. I have found that to be true in business. I have found that to be true even in the early days of building Lumi, that you will always face challenges. You will always face obstacles. Can you persist through those to find success and the good things on the other side of it?
Yeah, and I mean, you talked earlier about how, you know, to truly disrupt something, like, you really have to believe in it and you really have to just focus on it. And, you know, you've said in interviews before how, like, you still have never quite fully closed the door on playing in the NFL. And I'm curious of, how can you be truly focused on just your startup and just your angel investing and being a board member when you haven't quite closed the door on one chapter?
Yeah, I think it is very similar to the conversation that people had around, well, how do you play football and actually care about societal issues? I think everybody in this room is multifaceted. There is not one thing that you do solely. For me, I am a founder, I'm a football player, I'm a father, a husband, a son. I am all of these things. And I think when we look at what we are passionate about and what we are able to do and what we are able to accomplish, we have to think about it through the lens of what do we think we can actually handle. And there was a point in time where what I'm doing now, I've been like, you know what, that sounds like a lot. Because I hadn't built those muscles to be able to handle that. Over the years, you build those muscles and you get better at doing specific skills and being able to allocate your time. So for me, part of what allows me to do that is I get up at 3:30 in the morning. I start my work from 4:30 to about 7. I do my workout. From 7 through the rest of the day, I'm working on Lumi and focus there with the team. So now you make trade-offs and sacrifices in that process. Like, do I want to get up at 3:30 every day? No. But I know that's a trade-off to be able to get the things done that I want to. So I think it's what are you willing to sacrifice and what are you willing to do to actually be able to accomplish the goals that you want.
And what's getting you out of the bed at 3:30 in the morning to work out? Is that because if you get a call one day, you want to be able to pick up the phone?
Oh, absolutely. I think a couple of things. One, if I get a call, I am going to be ready. And there will never be a question of whether or not I wanted to play or whether or not I was ready to play during this time period. So that is something that I want to make very clear, and I want history to show that, because I think that is a very important part of my narrative and a very important part of what has happened since 2016. The other part of that is getting up at 3:30. That also means I'm showing up for my team to be ready to go. Part of the reason I do that is when I'm spending time on the West Coast, I'm still ahead of the East Coast. So I can get those emails out, get responses back by the time I'm back from my workout. Typically, I'll have a lot of responses there that I've already gotten ahead of where I would otherwise be. And the other part of that, it allows me to show up for my wife and my daughter. So it takes a lot of focus, a lot of hard work, and a lot of time consideration, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and you have a lot of eyes on you. You just raised a few $1 million in seed funding for your startup. I think you have a position right now that a lot of startup founders who just got a seed round would kill for. There's not a lot of startup founders who just have a seed round who are on this stage right now. And so I'm curious, what do you plan to do with this incredible platform and position you're in right now to do with Lumi?
Yeah. Well, first, I appreciate everybody being here. So we get to talk to you and share what we're doing at Lumi and how we're thinking about it. I think the other part is, one, as a startup founder, you are always looking for great talent, especially as an AI company, constantly looking for ML engineers, AI engineers. So if any of you are out there or know any great engineers out there, let us know. We're always looking for talent. The other part is, with Lumi, we've actually seen a lot of engagement and have had a lot of inbound from schools. So schools are looking at this to bring student voice to the forefront on project-based learning and how they increase student engagement and get them creating and being their own storytellers. So we actually have already signed contracts with a few of the top districts in the country, and that has been a growing part of the business for us. So as we look at creators, we have a lot of young creators who are coming on the platform and accessing Lumi as well.
All right. Everyone, Colin Kaepernick.
Thank you.